What's up, the Black Andy Cap? We're back at it, Central Florida sports fans. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep bringing it at you. NBA playoffs have reached the semifinal stage in both conferences. Got some nice matchups. Surprising to see New York Knicks, maybe not so surprising, and the Indiana Pacers for the Eastern Conference. And then we've got the Minnesota Timberwolves, and you've got an OKC over in the Western Conference Finals. So a new age is coming in the NBA, and I think this should be exciting for the Magic fan, right? There's a new era of teams, and I think the Orlando Magic are on the forefront of that, right? They've got two of the best players in the Eastern Conference, young players up and coming on their squad. So the future looks bright if they can put the pieces together, right? So we heard Jeff Weltman talk about this being, the Magic are in win now mode. And so moves that they're going to make are going to be about getting the team to that next level. That's exciting to hear. And obviously we want to see that happen. So, I got three things. And I talked about this before another episode. Who knows what's going to happen? Went back and listened to the postseason interviews from Weltman and Mosley in particular. And a couple things that I gleaned from there, three things I gleaned from that. All right. So here's three things that I'm gleaning from the post-season interviews. Let's listen to what Jeff Weltman had to say.
Our team is this team, before we even upgrade it, this team is going to look like, and we're going to go through different roster looks and different machinations over the coming seasons and, try to address our weaknesses. But these guys are going to look completely different in a few years. And that's the beauty of kind of going through the rebuild. If you get the right guys, it kind of becomes the gift that keeps giving. Because I do believe that the value of kind of following our North Star the last several years and really not compromising around developing those guys is going to show up for years to come. While I feel what we need is proven, proven shot making, proven offensive play, someone that's going to come in and help augment our weakness. Clearly we need to get better offensively. Clearly we need to shoot the ball better. And so, those are, I think, the goals. That's the lens that we need to look at, as we enter the postseason now. And, I don't think anything's off the table. Veteran help, proven offensive help is what we're going to be looking for. That the first place I have to start is what we tried to do when adding Kenny was to increase our shooting and increase our defensive DNA. And I think that, on the latter point, he made us a much better defensive team than we even already were. I think, he's an amazing guy. He plays games. He plays hurt. He's a terrific defender. He really helped us, I thought, kind of be who we were in the playoffs. And I expect more of that going forward from him. Obviously, he didn't shoot the ball the way that he hoped to, but more importantly, the way that he has over the last 5 seasons, coming in. So what accounts for that?
All right, listen to a couple things he said. He still talked about, even though he said he's moving to a win now situation, we're in win now mode. There's a couple things he said that lead me to point number one, and that's KCP will not be traded. Yep, Magic fans are going to be upset about that, but listen to what he said, right? He talked about maintaining the core DNA of the team, which is defense, okay? And KCP is a big part of that. You heard Weltman talk about it. Defensively, he was who he was. Just offensively, he suffered a little bit. And then he talked about, some of the analytics. And, big point he brought up in that was that, hey, offensively, everybody was down. Nobody shot as well this season as they did in previous history with this team. So it just wasn't KCP.
And I think these are questions that we've been asking ourselves. It's not just him, it's our whole team. We had a roster of guys that shot career lows. What accounts for that?
There are a lot of expectations for KCP, and that's what we have as fans, and we often overreact. Whereas Weltman is the GM. His job isn't to overreact. His job is to make the right decision. So what I'm starting to hear from this conversation is he's saying yeah, KCP had a down season, but it just wasn't KCP. It was everybody. Something else may be a factor in this, and we've got to take a look at it. He sounds like he's keeping KCP. I think he's going to keep KCP. And if you look at the last episode, I told you we should keep KCP. You can't get rid of the guy after one bad season. All right, so stay tight, but I'm pretty certain KCP will be on this roster next season. And I'm glad for that. Now, the second thing we want to talk about here is the thing number 2. Let's listen to a question presented to Mosley about his coaching staff.
I think we're gonna leave no stone unturned when it comes to try to find ways to continue to get better, not just as players but as coaches as well. I welcome any version of trying to get better myself, as well as the staff, to find ways that we can help these guys and put them in the best position to be successful.
Listen to what he said here. All right, he said he'd be happy to anything that would improve the team. Let's put that together with what Weltman said about the whole team when we were discussing KCP, the whole team suffering offensively and shooting not being as good this season as it was last season, and figuring that out. I think the Magic are going to add an offensive coach this season. I'm not quite sure of the gentleman who, I forgot his name, that doesn't mean he's gone, but I think they're going to bring on some type of offensive advisor or somebody who can build an offense that will cause this team, or that will create an offense that will generate better shots. Now, I've said the team's problem isn't necessarily shooting, it's scoring. When this team can get good shots, they make good shots, whether they're threes or mid-ranges. What happens with this team offensively is they get in a position where they can't generate offense. They can't generate good looks. They give the ball to Paolo. Paolo tries to go get fouled in the middle. Athleticism is also a big issue, so that's something else that we have to look at during the offseason. So, like I said, I think there's going to be some type of offensive addition to the coaching staff, someone they feel a little more comfortable with in terms of building or getting an offense that will generate scores. It sounds like Mosley is all a part of that. He feels, that's what it sounded like to me. Mosley sounded very, very happy to hear that and said, hey, I'm happy to do whatever it takes to make this team better. And so I think that's something you're going to see in addition to the offensive staff, or coaching staff for this team in the offseason. Now, number 3, what's happening in number 3? Again, what we always knew are coming in. Again, Weltman said if we're going to make a move, right, it's going to have to involve trades, okay? Again, coupling that with his core DNA comment, he really believes in this core DNA. He still don't get it twisted. He wants more offense, but he still wants this to be a defensive team. And that's not a bad thing, okay? Look at the Knicks. They're a defensive team. That's what Thibodeau has built his whole reputation on as a coach, was as a defensive expert. So I think that part is staying. So what is the point number 3 is I think the Magic are only going to make one big move.
I think you guys know that, we're building through those guys. And I think that it's kind of a unique, ability to look at a roster where, you're playing through 2 6'10" guys who, as I said earlier, even as they grow up, 22 and 23 years old, what are they going to look like in a few years? And I think that provides a lot of opportunities for us to, build the team in a unique way. That being said, I think that playmaking, veteran leadership, the ability for us to kind of get into our stuff. I thought Corey showed some of the value of that, like towards the back end of the season, getting us into our stuff, getting the ball over the court quickly and organizing our team a little bit. So I do think there's value there. And again, is this part of why, our shooting numbers picked up the back half of the season? I think there's a lot that goes into all these things. They're all interconnected. Clearly, Franz and Paolo have, exceptional skill sets for their size, their IQs, and the way that they see the game and the way that they make other players around them better. But we need to add a lot more offensively to get this team where we want it. Is it just adding a shooter? Is it adding a playmaker? What unlocks our existing roster, and how do we best add to that roster to fix ourselves offensively, to fix our shooting production? I do think that, kind of getting back to the earlier question, you have to look at how injuries affect that. The expression, you are what you eat. Well, there's a direct link to shooting percentage and shot quality. And I can tell you that our shot quality deviated wildly this year, depending on, what time of the season you're asking about and who was on our roster. We had a point during the season when Franz and Paolo were off the roster where we were last in shot quality. And by the end of the season, when they came back and found their footing and our team kind of figured out a way to play, we were number one in shot quality. And I don't think it's a surprise to see that, we went from 31% to 35% from March 1st through the rest of the season because of that. That's not good enough. We have to get better.
I think the Magic are going to make one big move, dump off some of the salaries that they have, like Jonathan Isaac. I think he's gone. Gary Harris Jr., I think he's probably out of here. Who else? I think Wendell Carter Jr. stays, unless it's a super big name, right? Unless it's a big name that's going to change things. I think he's going to try and find someone with a little more offense combined with someone with more offense, an upgrade in the offensive coaching. And I think he can get more. He talked about the analytics, and when he looked at it, he says, it wasn't just a few players. In overall, the Magic offense just did not produce as much this season as it did last season. He's considering the injuries, but at the end of the day, he did mention and he recognized the fact that the offense or the team needed more offensive firepower. So I think there's only going to be one big move during the offseason. I don't think we're going to see 2 and 3 different people unless they're all a part of one deal. But I think that's where we're at. Quick bonus. How you feeling about the Giannis thing? Over the weekend, Giannis did it on X, formerly known as Twitter. He did a Q&A, live Q&A. And one of the things he says, hey, I love when I go to the Florida cities, right? So did he mean Miami? Or did he mean Miami and Orlando, right? There's only 2 Florida cities he's playing in, so that would make Orlando one of those cities he really liked. He did not mention one specifically, so that's interesting to me, right? Why Orlando could be in that list is because Orlando's a lot like Milwaukee. It's a small market team, but everybody loves Florida, right? All your friends, if you have friends from out of town that they come to Florida for the summer to visit, they always love Florida, right? I know I have relatives that come from out of town. And when they come here, they always, oh man, I wish I could stay in Florida, right? So that was interesting to hear about Giannis. I don't think that's going to happen because to get Giannis, I feel like you're going to have to give up either Paolo or Franz. I actually think you'll have to give up Paolo to get Giannis, and I don't think Weltman wants to do that. I think that's a short term. Giannis is much older. Paolo's on the upswing of his career. Now what if you had to give up Franz? Would you give up Franz to get Giannis? What if Milwaukee was willing to do that in a bunch of first-round picks? How would you feel about giving up Franz to get Giannis and have Paolo on the squad, right? Give up some of your other pieces and then go from there. What if you had to give up? Who would you be? What if you had to give up Suggs? Would you give up Suggs and some picks and some of the bench players to get Giannis on this team? Do you feel like it's worth it? I know people that don't think Giannis is worth it under any condition, right? They just feel like he's not the player. I'm a little bit like that. He's a great player, but I don't know if you can build around it. He's so ball centric. He has to have the ball to be effective, and you've got Paolo, right? So interesting offseason coming up. Those are my 3 what I feel like to be locks for the offseason and what's going to happen with this Magic team. Remember, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Easy.